Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek, the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We're on Volume 23, Chapter 3. I have to admit, I feel bad. I feel real bad after reading Chapter 4. It's one of those moments of like, you kind of have the same feeling as Rudius in a lot of sense, but there is a side of you that's like, you kind of did have that inkling that things are being misread, and it makes you feel really bad. Like, it makes you feel really bad. Petagoose, my dude. Petagoose, my dude. It's just kind of in that same realm as something like Orsted, where you don't quite know because of the way that they present themselves, but this guy does kind of like you. This dude is kind of likes you. But let's be true. Let's be honest. From the very get-go, their first meet, this was presented. He wasn't his friend when he presented this at first. And so you do have to get a sense that there just maybe a lot has changed. A lot has changed, but we'll get into it when we get into it. I think this is going to be a really fun Mushoku Monday. The last one was really fun, so it really does feel like things are really picking up. So I'm super excited to get into this. But first things first, thank you to everybody that dropped by for the premiere. Hey, chat. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday. After Mushoku Monday, make sure to hit that like button down below. That's a way to support the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. Just hit that like button. It helps us out here. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. Greatly appreciate all the kind words, everybody's support, sharing out to your friends. All that stuff has made Mushoku Monday what it is, and I greatly, greatly appreciate it. And yes, as per usual, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. It means a great deal to me. Sergio Donna with 17 months membership. I don't know, is that our longest one? I'm not sure. Kimmy Da Human with a new membership. Roflux Ray with 4 months. Spud Monkey with a month. No with a super. Gearless with a massive, massive weekly, pretty much at this point. Super. Thank you so much, Gearless. It's so amazing. Hope you have a great Halloween. Hope you had a great Halloween. I'm realizing I'm recording this before Halloween. Hope you have a great Halloween. Totally Not an Ill with 2 supers. Thank you so much for your support. It means so much to me. And yes, as per usual, Inferno Torch with all those supers. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It means so much to me. You guys are absolutely amazing. But yes, with that said, let's just get into it. I think I covered everything. There was quite a bit that I kind of popped my mind from last week, but I'm sure that we're going to probably get into it no matter what. There was one thing that came to mind when I was reading these next 2 chapters, which was Orsted back here having that issue with trying to tell Rudius the harsh truth. There is a side of me that kind of wonders now if he knew what Petagoose was doing. Like, he knew and he was just letting it happen. Like, yeah, I kind of like the idea that these two guys are kind of with each other, so I don't want to rock the boat. I know what Petagoose is doing here, and let's just let Rudius do what he's doing. But anyways, let's get into it. Chapter 3, Aluce, City of the Divine Continent. Stepping out of the box, they found a wide open plain stretched out before them. Either because of the cold or the thin air, there wasn't so much of a single tree growing. The ground was covered in nothing but short grass and shrubbery. While our breath turned white with the chill, there wasn't any snow. Due to the land being smooth and flat, it meant the travel wouldn't be too hard. Yeah, it's playing it out like that trek up the side of it was like all the trouble. Now it's just like smooth sailing. It was looking like they'd make good time to reach Aluce within a day. Since it was dark and the night would hide the monsters, they decided to make camp. They made a pot of goat soup, using a method that Geese taught them. With him now an enemy, you never knew where life would take you. Afterwards, Rudius moved the box onto the continent's shelf, relocated their fire, and huddled up for the night. They had done plenty of travel in the cold, but Rudius wanted to consider Sylphie's body and Sieg. Sieg's cheeks were bright red, but it didn't seem like he had a fever. He was doing fine, just like Orsted had said. Still, infants could easily get sick, so he wanted to keep an eye out. It also mentioned the idea they had somebody keep watch to prevent, like, in case a monster came by and just, like, knocked it off the shelf. And I'm like, yeah, technically, why don't you just move it away from the edge? Why not? Why do you have it right on the continent's edge? The next day, they trekked onwards. The city of Aluce was northeast of their location, but nothing but empty plains between. It didn't look like a landmark was in sight, at first. Long ago, a hero came to the land and crossed the Divine Continent, in the era of the Laplace War. He climbed the Divine Continent from the Demon Continent side. Then, he obtained a hidden skill that would prove invaluable to their victory. In case they met with an untimely demise, the hero left landmarks, showing the path towards the technique he obtained. Incidentally, that hero went by the name Petagoose. There's 2 things here. One, I didn't realize until later. The first thing was that I realized immediately, yeah, this is probably when he met Servarl. If he came here at some point during the Laplace War, this is probably when he met Servarl. This is probably the moment that she, like, dedicated herself to him. Now, I don't think they indicated why. I would assume that either the idea that maybe he saved her or the idea that he achieved something amazing and that she wanted to support him because he was so amazing. Which, yes, leads into what did he achieve? What was this great technique that he obtained? At first, I wasn't really kind of connecting it for some reason, and I probably should have. Yes, the Laplace War. What did he do during the Laplace War? He summoned this massive, massive floating castle. Chaos Breaker? Maybe that's what he came here for? I mean, it doesn't really click for me until later on when Reese is going down these ruins, and suddenly he goes, hey, this place suddenly looks like, familiar. Looks like the ruins of Pedagoose's fortress, the underground area. Click, right there. So that means that, and now it doesn't mean that it's Skyfolk stuff, but it means at least whatever ruins that Rudy has seen in Chaos Breaker down in the bottoms of it was probably here. Given the land here had short grass and a few trees, the marker stood out. As they approached, they found they were pillars. They were about 1.5 meters tall, likely made from earth magic. They were just thick enough that you can wrap your arms around them. The upper part of the pillar was scuffed and worn by time. If you looked at a cross-section, you could see that the pillar wasn't cylindrical. Instead, it was shaped like a drop. The tapered tip of the drop pointed towards the city. So it was written in the legend of Pedagoose. This landmark doubtly only made sense to whoever read the book. I don't know, I think it sounds pretty standard. As expected by the trial of Pedagoose himself, his book held plenty of hints. Not that Rudius thought that he wrote a thing himself. I wonder if Servarl did. A few hours... She totally did. She totally wrote that, trying to tell everybody about how magnanimous he is. A few hours passed as they traveled, and they ran into a lot of monsters. Monsters fell into 3 types. Winged goats they found before. Heavens Bustalis, that looked like 4-meter-long weasels. A giant bipedal birds of prey, known as Nidhogg ostriches. There didn't seem to be many amphibians or insect monsters, probably due to temperatures. They were on the level of monsters in the northern part of the central continent. They weren't as weak as the ones found near Ostra Kingdom or Milis, but they also weren't as strong as Demon Continent and Beggar Continent. The winged goats managed to flock in double digits, while Mustalis and ostriches roamed alone or in pairs. Reese would have put the winged goats at a D rank, while the other 2 at C rank. They were all capable of flight, however, so they would rank higher on the central continent. People have a psychological weakness against things that can fly. You can't get to it. You can't get to it. It can come down and swoop down on you. I think it's more the idea they can't put up barriers. Like what they'll get in here in a minute with this idea of them having these low fences. You can't create these fortifications that will prevent things from coming in. Adventurers like them had no problem with it. Edis diverted the winged goat's attention, while Roxy launched high-rank spells. Edis could finish off the other 2 kinds herself without thinking about it. They couldn't reach Rudius, much less Sieg or Sylphie. Rudius was grateful to the man of the house for protecting them. Edis has the pants in the house. They kept their guard up, though. The Divine Continent was sure to have greater challenges than that, even if they didn't pass through them on the trip. The forest, mountains, and labyrinths would have stronger monsters. Yeah, that was kind of interesting that they do eventually bring up the labyrinth. And it's like, it's right here in a minute. And I'm kind of curious. I was really assuming what they were going to get into here in a minute, like with those ruins. I'm like, watch, they're walking right into the labyrinth. But I think he would have noted it because he mentioned before that labyrinths have like an aura about them. And I was kind of speculating it's probably because the mana's being pulled to the core. The person feels that mana flowing into the labyrinth and going down into the core. And so him not mentioning anything at the entrance kind of tipped away from that. And I kind of figured with how apparently it's extremely, extremely difficult, Orste would have told him. I think Orste would have told him. The Divine Continent Labyrinth, known as Hell, housed hordes of the world's nastiest monsters. Again, right there. With its innermost sanctum guarded by a vicious slime called Vita. The mention of the slime reminded Brudius of the Demon King back in the Library Labyrinth. According to Orsted, this one was on another level. They wouldn't want to go anywhere near it. No, actually, the mention of a slime that's a Demon King reminds me of Reincarnated as a slime. But yes, this is Vita, which they mentioned, I think, like literally the last volume. Orsted called him the Abyss King, which apparently is going to be somebody that is going to be an adversary for them in the future. When Reis was asking anybody else that's going to be turning against them for Laplace's return, yes, that was one of the ones that he mentioned. There's the Abyss King Vita. He's inside this labyrinth. And yeah, they're eventually going to... we got to eventually deal with them. So it does assume that, yes, still, even though they aren't going to see it here, Rudius will eventually probably have to go to this labyrinth because this apparently is going to be somebody that's going to be an issue later on. Or Orsted himself is going to go there. He'll just come back and say, yeah, I made a donut out of that slime. That disgusting Abyss King. Rudius wouldn't breathe a word about that to Edis. She wanted to go if she knew. But she was a mature adult now. She was far more logical and accommodating than she used to be when she was a spoiled princess. She might want to go deep down, but she wouldn't demand it, right? That's when Edis piped up. The Divine Continent has this labyrinth called Hell, right? It does, Roxy replied. I hear it's quite dangerous. It's one of the 3 great dungeons, in fact. I wish I could go. Let's see. I think our current members, we could get pretty far in. Ree doesn't like labyrinths too much, though. He lost Paul in one after all. Oh, right. Roxy shut her down for him. What about you, Sylphie? Edis had tossed the question back to Sylphie, who was playing with the baby and the carrier on Rudius's back. Are you into labyrinths at all? I suppose not. My children are more important to me right now. It's not what she was asking. That's not what she was asking. Sylphie's voice was nonchalant as she stroked Sieg's head. It sounded like her mental health was starting to recover. No, that was short-sighted way of thinking. Bruce couldn't assume from the surface. He needed to rebuild her trust. Back when Paul had an affair and got Lilia pregnant, it took him forever to regain Zenith's trust. There was once a time where Rudius didn't understand why Zenith stayed angry for so long, or why she didn't just forgive Paul. Now he understood. It was because Paul only reacted to what he saw on the surface, and only groveled until he got what he wanted. Rudius wasn't supposed to be looking for a smile. He had to do everything in his power to regain Sylphie's trust. It wasn't going to get done in a day. But no matter how long it took, he had to show with his actions that he loved her and their child. Thinking about how to do that was the hard part. He'd have to seize the opportunity as he thought of them. With that, they continued their journey. Interesting here. Yeah, first, I have to give Edis a lot of credit here. The idea that she's not immediately trying to charge off to this labyrinth, which, yeah, she was technically doing that on the Demon Continent. Like, every time she heard about a labyrinth or thought about a labyrinth, she wanted to go to it. Let's go do a labyrinth. And Rajurd's like, no, that's dangerous. We're not doing that. Like, Rajurd was very quick to shut it down. Like, no, I'm getting you home. We're not stopping by some place where you can get killed. I'm protecting you and taking you home. And even Rudius was like, yeah, I don't really want to do that. That sounds extremely dangerous. That sounds extremely stupid to do. But this is something that she wants to do, which does kind of suck because so far, the only person that has done a labyrinth is Rudius and Roxy. And so, yeah, I would love to have a day where, and that's probably going to be hell. If they end up going to hell, Edis is totally going. They ain't a way in hell that Rudius is going to get out of that house and go to that. Unless Edis is doing something else and Rudius like has to pivot quickly, go there. Edis is going. They ain't no doubt in my mind. Hopefully the whole wives come with them, but at least Edis, maybe Roxy as well. But yeah, I would totally love to have a segment. No, Edis went with them at the Library Labyrinth. Never mind. Library Labyrinth. She did the Library Labyrinth. I'm correcting myself now. Which technically the Library Labyrinth wasn't in the web novel, so I would guess still for web novel readers anyways, that would be their first. But yeah, Sylphie hasn't gone to one. I don't see her ever. Like, even though she's pivoting right here and saying my children are the most important thing, that makes sense. It's her basically saying, no, I don't have an excitement for labyrinths. This is my concern right now. I'm only focused on this, so I've never really thought about it. I don't necessarily think that Sylphie would be excited about doing labyrinths. I don't think she's ever even mentioned the idea of being excited about doing labyrinths. I seem to recall that one of the other timelines, she used to go to labyrinths. Her and Roxy did. So I would assume that if she did try it, she'd probably really enjoy it. But anyways, that aside, very interesting here, Rudius immediately thinks about Paul when it comes to Sylphie being upset. Like, okay, she's recovering, but I don't think that I've regained her trust. He's still stuck on the idea that I forgot to have this name. This is something that she asked of me. She might possibly believe that I don't love this child. Which, yes, as we see in the previous chapters, she was constantly thinking about that. The idea of her being alone and not having Rudius to help her. Rudius isn't going to save me. And yes, even having that nasty, intrusive thought, that fleeting thought of, what if Rudius doesn't love this child? It's there. That is there, and that is something that Rudius is actually picking up on, that it's something that he's going to have to fix. He's going to have to rebuild that trust. I don't think that she's that far in that realm. More so the idea that she, based on her thoughts that we've seen, it's not so much that she believes that Rudius hates the child, doesn't love the child. Again, it was an intrusive thought there. It's more of the idea that she feels that she's alone in protecting the child because he's busy, because there's a lot of things on his plate. There's a lot of things that he needs to do. But I think, and we'll kind of see it here with these chapters, I think there is an element of him proving that he's still there, that he still will protect the child. That still has to be established, and he will do that. It's just that I don't think that he's realizing what that is. He's stuck on the name. He's stuck on that name, which is something that she keeps bringing up. And so it's definitely something true. But equating that to the whole situation with Paul and Zenith and Lilia is technically interesting. Knowing the idea that, unfortunately, and this is something I've talked about quite a bit back in the day, that Sylphie has a problem with expressing herself. She always keeps things bottled up. And at first, I thought that was sort of a thing that was created by the fact that Sylphie for the longest time was Fitz. And the idea of Fitz was a person that kept their emotions hidden, their expression hidden, and never talks. They were trying to keep it hidden who she was. And she was supposed to be Fitz, a guy. This unknown, mysterious person that shows up out of nowhere. So she always had to hide her emotions. She couldn't express those emotions. And I always felt that was going to be something that would end up affecting her in how she expresses herself. And we even seen that later on when she get tipsy. That first scene that we seen her get tipsy, Reese was talking about how suddenly out of nowhere she's super doty, and she's very jealous of Rijerd. Every time he talks about Rijerd, she gets really jealous, and it upsets her. Again, a sign that she doesn't express herself. But I think that was sort of co-opted into the creation of the home and the grouping of the wives, them coming together and banding together to make sure that nothing is wrong in the household, so that when Marius comes home, he doesn't have to worry about us. That was the whole get there. But again, there, it sort of carries over that previous thing of not expressing yourself. So even here, she's not telling him what's wrong. She's not telling him why she's upset. She's not expressing to him or having him help him. She's not giving him some burden to carry because she's choosing to. She could tell him what's wrong, but that will burden him. I don't want to do that. But the opposite effect there that she doesn't realize is that's creating a burden for him. It's kind of an interesting thing there. She's choosing to not tell him what's wrong because she doesn't want to create a problem for him. But in doing so, it's creating a problem for him because he's constantly trying to figure out what's wrong. What's wrong? She's obviously upset. What's wrong? What's wrong? This has been like literally the last few chapters has been nothing but him wondering what is wrong. And that has been weighing on his mind this entire time. He hasn't been thinking about anything else but what's wrong with Sylphie. Even before Orsted, something else. He's like, what's wrong? There's something else wrong. I can't tell you, it's a family matter. It's constantly in his head. So she's burdening him in a way. It's kind of interesting. And he's contrasting that with Zenith, who was always expressive about it. And I can totally relate to this because I've had experience with people that are overly expressive with their problems and people that keep it bottled up. And on one end, I almost feel like sometimes the person that is expressive of it will take advantage of the one that is not expressive of it because they constantly berate them for not expressing it while at the same time being upset whenever they express it. But the person that is overly expressive of it is kind of annoying because it's like you have to make a big deal out of everything. But it's because that's what they're trying to do. This is what I feel inside and I'm expressing it outwardly in a large way because I want you to acknowledge it. Zenith wanted Paul to acknowledge it because she felt extremely wrong by it. This hurt her, which yes, is in contrast to a lot of people what they believe with how Zenith accepted Lilia. It's not the case. Paul was destroyed for doing that. It didn't laugh it off and ignore it. Zenith made him regret it for a long time. Again, they became the sister wives. They became the wives of the house. They became the kings of the house. Paul was over here going, can I get in there, please? Can I get in there, please? And they're over here like, no, shut up. Like they took over the house. Lilia and Zenith took over the house. She let Paul know. And Paul fully acknowledged it. And yeah, Rudius right here is similar to me. Like, yeah, I constantly was wondering, like, why is she overly expressive about this? Why does she not just forgive him? She wanted him to know. And Paul reacted to it. Very interesting. Anyways, I talked way too long about that. Sorry. By the evening, they saw the city. Is that Aluce? It looks kind of humble. Roxy wasn't kidding. All they saw was a series of buildings built from rock, soil, and bone, all surrounded by a low fence. There was no fortified ramparts, rarely found in this world. But maybe they had the right idea. A wall of any height wouldn't do much with flying monsters, right? And that's what I thought when I immediately seen this. I was either they have some way of warding it, like some way of pushing them away by a scent or something like that. They burn incense or something like that. Or maybe a magic circle around the entire city. Or, yes, which is basically it, a barrier. I was thinking, okay, it's probably got a barrier. Still, he wondered if it was wise to have no line of defense for a city. As they approached, Rudius ran into something that could be described as a film placed over the town. It was like they were looking through a sheet of glass. Looks like it's a barrier. A big one at that. As Roxy spoke, Rudius realized how they were actually protected. It made sense. There was no way they would leave it completely defenseless. Think they'll let us in? Sylphie asked. Hard to say. Orsa didn't say anything about this. Not many of Rudius's acquaintances knew much about Skyfolk to begin with. You didn't see Skyfolk in other continents, so there was no telling what they were like. Exclusionary? friendly towards other races, Savara was pretty much the only skyfolk Rudius had met, and given that she didn't regard him with much favor, that colored his assumptions. On the other hand, she was plenty lenient with people Petagus held in high regard, like Zenoba. Yeah, she's not a good example, and yeah, that was kind of one of the interesting things when he first said that. I'm like, yeah, I don't think we've ever mentioned another skyfolk besides Savara. But he said that's pretty much the only skyfolk. Pretty much. Why would it not say the only skyfolk? Does it imply that he may have met somebody he just doesn't remember? That makes me kind of question there. I guess the idea is that there could be somebody that might be part skyfolk, and he just doesn't know they're skyfolk. If nobody warned him beforehand, then there was surely no danger. They came to the edge of the barrier alongside a fenced portion of the town. Barriers typically acted like walls, cordoning off a specific area. But barriers could act differently on the Divine Continent, like deliver electric shock that could fry you to a crisp. This one's pretty sturdy. I wonder if I can cut it. Meanwhile, Edis was knocking on the barrier. Wait, Edis, be careful touching that. What if it zaps you? Huh? I know that. A shudder ran down Edis's spine. Talk about reckless. So, what do we do? That's a good question. Ruiz considered yelling from outside the barrier, or walking around until he found an entrance. Still, there was no signs of a gap, as far as he could see. There was no signs of a road either, but there were races that could fly. They might not even have the concept of making a gate, entrance, or road for that matter. That meant their entrance could be in the sky. In the end, destroying the barrier sounded like a better idea. They'd repair it later, but they wouldn't get anywhere until they got in. At this point, I'm kind of wondering, why do you have to go to this town? He said to go to Aluce Hill and do a baptism. Why is Ruius so obsessed with going in the town? It's got a barrier up. At this point, you can't get in. And now you're considering destroying the barrier and possibly making an enemy of these people? At least showing some sort of aggression. Just go to the hill. Like, why do we have to go into the town? It doesn't make any sense to me. You just set up a camp, have somebody watch every night like you did last night. What is the need for going in there? I know story reason why they end up going in there, and that's because they want to acknowledge all this interesting stuff around, Sieg and everything. But still, it's like, why? All right, let's break it. That you never ask. Actually, Edis, I was thinking I could use stone cannon too. Sorry to cut in, but it looks like we have company. Following Roxy's gaze, there was birds flying towards them from within the town. Even far off in the distance, they seemed pretty big. Probably the size of people. Wait, they were people. People with wings. Skyfolk. And now Rudius's lack of learning Skyfolk tongue is gonna or Sky God tongue is finally gonna bite him in the butt. Did they get suspicious because we were knocking on the barrier? They maybe respond in the same way they do when there was a monster appearing outside the town. Whatever the case was, first impressions were important. Rudius would brush off those customer service skills. That work drilled into him. 3 skyfolks descended upon them with only the sound of their flapping wings. They wore simple robes that seemed to be made of bird pelts. They had spears in hands, which were a bit unusual, as only Superds wielded them. Yeah, I thought that was very interesting, and it makes perfect sense to me. That yes, the only reason that people don't use spears throughout the world is because of the Superds. The Superd tribes back here during the war, going around massacring people, it created a stigma around that. Nobody wants to wield spears. That makes people think of Superds. Even though you can see that, yes, spears are very, very useful weapons. Why not use them? Well, here, in the Divine Continent, where, again, they weren't involved with the war and barely anybody comes up there, yeah, they use spears. And yes, as Skyfolk, able to maneuver around the sky and whatnot, they're extremely, extremely powerful weapons. Much more powerful than something like a blade or something like that they have to get in close. It's something they can fly around and poke down when you can't even reach them. It actually makes perfect sense why the Skyfolks use specifically spears. They eyed Rudius and party with suspicion, which he couldn't blame them for. Humans pretty much never climbed the cliff to get up here. Rudius, on the other hand, was beaming. He welcomed them with old Rudius' smile. It's like, yeah, the worst smile ever. I always have to point that out because most of the time it points that out. They look disgusted, kind of thing. Ahem, do excuse us. I am Rudius Greyrat. I came because Lord Petagus demanded that I have my child baptized here. Would you perhaps be acquainted with him? Rudius opened up with human tongue, but they responded in a language he couldn't understand. Looking to his wives for help, Roxy spoke up. Yes, that's Sky God tongue. What should we do? That made sense. The Divine Continent's default language was a Sky God tongue. Old Rudius would be tripped up by this, but now he was Ors's subordinate. He was totally prepared for this little obstacle. Don't worry, I came prepared. Rudius opened up with human tongue, and even if his words wouldn't get across, his intentions to converse would. Their interaction should have quickly communicated that they were not hostile. Ahem. Rudius had prepared, but he didn't have quite enough time to study the nuances of the Sky God tongue. Rudius took out a bundle of paper from within his jacket, flipped to a specific page, and showed it to the receptionist. It's called receptionists. I mean, they are receiving them. On it was transcription of what Rudius had just said in Sky God tongue. All that was left was a trust in their literacy skills. The Sky Folk's reaction was dramatic. They immediately pulled up a stake from in front of the fence, and they spread their arms and wings to welcome them inside. They entered the divine continent city of Aluce. Very interesting. Yep, immediately the mention of Petagus. Click. Immediate response. Now, this is interesting because I would assume that I'm guessing Rudius wrote this down in Sky God tongue because he's mentioned the idea that he doesn't quite understand. He didn't have time to study the nuances of the language. But then he's presenting this paper, which makes me assume that Rudius wrote down on a piece of paper using a translation from a book. Okay, here's a book that tells you Sky God tongue, and he used that to cross-reference to write down on a sheet of paper to show them. He can't speak it. He's not fluent in it, but he's able to at least translate the symbols and say, okay, here's what I'm saying here. My assumption would have been that he would have asked Orsted, hey, do you know Sky God tongue? Which I'm wondering if he does. I am actually very curious if what all languages Orsted knows. I don't think we've ever gotten to him speaking other languages. The assumption is that he's talking human God tongue to Rudius all the time because Edis understands what he's saying. And so he's always talking that language, at least whenever Edis is around, Edis understands what he's saying. But it makes me kind of wonder if Orsted knows other languages. I would think that he does. I mean, over the many, many loops that he's done, he's having to interact with so many people. He at least knows Demon God tongue. I would assume so. But again, at the same time, does he interact with people much? Again, the assumption is that whenever anybody sees him, they run away terrified. He doesn't have a chance to talk to people. But he could write down things and give people things. That could be the way that he's communicating to people, to try to find people, to interrogate people. Again, it implies that he interrogated geese at some point. So I'm kind of curious. I mean, yes, even in Osfer Kingdom, the room was full of people that were obviously acknowledging what Orsted was saying. The city of Aluce was a bit plainer than expected. The houses were indeed crafted from bone, rock, soil, and hay. Many of the buildings topped out at 3 to 4 stories. If Rudius would pick one thing unusual, there was no staircases. Well, yeah, they're skyfolk. They just fly to the next floor. The skyfolk tended farmland, dressed in bird feather pelts, fashioned into jackets. The most startling difference here was that the people had wings. They took flight even when moving a short distance, and a few of them were flying circles above them to get a good look at their new visitors. It was a sort of podunk farming village you'd find anywhere. Pretty similar to Buena Village, really. Rudius was expecting a more Romanish architecture, or something angelic or heavenly. You expect that, like the white pillars and everything. In the end, the skyfolk were just people with wings. No more, no less. Aluce was probably a backwoods settlement on the edge of the continent, so it checked out. There was no lodgings here, and nobody spoke human tongue. That said, there was one word they could both understand. Petagus. Just walking around the town going, Petagus, 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 Petagus. Given how readily they welcomed him in, these people must have a deep gratitude towards him. After being led to some sort of meeting place, they brought food, while a guy who resembled the village elder talked about something with a smile, before breaking out the alcohol. One thing was a bit strange. All the locals wanted to touch Sieg's feet. Rudius was suspicious early on, but the village elder started the trend. The locals followed one after another, and Rudius accepted them without turning them away. He was the baby that came for Petagus' trial, so maybe he thought that he could bestow them some kind of good luck. While Rudius might have felt a bit unnerved by such lavish treatment, they seemed to have good intentions, so Rudius accepted their lodgings for the night. That evening, after putting Sieg to sleep, Rudius talked with Sylphie for a bit. That is very, very peculiar. Even after reading the next chapter and everything, it's very curious. Again, the assumption here is that Petagus came here and something crazy happened. He either came here and saved the Skyfolk, maybe just possibly just seeing him summon Chaosbreaker shocked them. Like, this impressed them so much that they see him as like a deity. I can see the Skyfolks just literally seeing him as a deity, just like Savarl, and that's why Savarl went with him. They see him as some sort of divine being that is incredibly powerful. But the curious question here is that they come here and they say, hey, we're here because, you know, Petagus wants us to baptize the child. Was that enough for them to all see that this person is important? Is that enough for them to all see if Petagus wants this child to come here and get baptized, that means Petagus thinks that this child is special somehow. This child is special to Petagus, and now they all want to touch him. And that could probably be as simple as that. And the idea of just child deemed by Petagus special. And now they all want to touch this child's feet to get some sort of blessing from him. It's very interesting. Turns out this place is pretty normal. Yeah, I expect some kind of uncharted natural wonder, since it's called the Divine Continent, but everyone living here is just a regular person, outside of the flying thing. I've never left the Central Continent. Are the others normal too? Rias was reminded of the wild splendor of the Demon Continent, the northwestern edge of Bagoa. The residents looked different, talked different, and lived in houses unlike anywhere else. Outside of that, they were pretty much the same. Yeah, I guess they are. Each place has slightly different customs, though. Renoa and Osra have some differences there, yeah. Sylphie was quiet, her face tense, as though she was in deep thought. But she didn't look depressed. Yeah, I've always liked that, because Rias has mentioned this before, this idea of, like, traveling around a lot of places and acknowledging that there's subtle differences, but everybody's just kind of living. Everybody is just kind of living. I think the one that kind of stood out to me the most, and I think it's because he was much more older at that point, was the Beggar Continent. I was really fascinated with how, like, different the culture was there and how it was so secluded. It was just extremely secluded. Now, it was the same thing with the Demon Continent, but again, it wasn't like Rudius was really pointing it out a lot then. Is there something the matter? I was just thinking that nobody treated Sig weirdly. They all came to touch his feet. What? They all came in line to touch his feet. That's not treating him weirdly? They're treating him like it's a deity. Yeah, they didn't. The Skyfolk of the Divine Continent didn't participate in Laplace's war. Their isolation on the Divine Continent allowed them to be the one race to escape Laplace's invasion. So of course they wouldn't fear the Superb. That was why the warrior people of the village still used spears, and why they didn't show a reaction to Sieg or Roxy's hair color. According to Orsted, long ago, as in over 4,000 years ago during the Second Human-Demon War, they despised demons. No matter how long-lived your race is, though, 4,000 years is a lot of time. Generations and generations. That hatred must have withered away. But it was possible that hearing the word Petagus had made them careful not to show overt hostility. If only everyone could be like them. Sylphie's lips drew into a smile that looked almost forced. Okay, there's a lot right here. There's a lot right here. Very curious here. Yeah, they mentioned the idea that according to Orsted, 4,000 years ago, way back here, Skyfolk apparently despised the demons. And I guess that makes sense, that probably the point in which, they traveled to this world, or one or the other got there first or after, whatever, they probably had a conflict. And that could probably have created a lot of bad blood there. Which does kind of make me wonder if that's one of the reasons why Servarl is so against demons being up there. I mean, with Petagus. Obviously, Petagus doesn't like it for a reason. Which does make me kind of wonder. Damn. I never really thought about that before. Obviously, the assumption's always been that Petagus has a hatred for demons. He doesn't like Laplace. Wants to destroy it. And he doesn't like the idea of demons coming into the Chaos Breaker. Even Rudius's wife, he doesn't want her up there. It makes you wonder. For a while there, I was kind of curious if it was because there's something in the Chaos Breaker that can cause a problem if a demon gets in there. Early, before we found out about how Laplace himself works in his rebirth, I was assuming there was a circle or something up there that was sealing away Laplace, and if a demon gets in there, they can destroy that circle, and it will release Laplace. But then we find out later, he's waiting for Laplace to come back. I would think if there was a way they can release it, come on in here, release it so I can kill him really quickly. Again, it was all kind of these assumptions of how Laplace was. Early on, we thought he was sealed away. And then we find out that he's in this reincarnation method. But then you kind of wonder, why does he hate them so much? Is it just strictly a prejudice? And why would that carry over to even Rudius's wife if it seems like Petagus likes Rudius? It starts to make me kind of wonder if there is partially that prejudice, but also an aspect of the past. Is the reason why all kind of tied in with Chaos Breaker and 4,000 years ago and the Skyfolk and him coming there and them loving him and the summoning of the Chaos Breaker itself? Is this all possibly going to be tied in together? We'll be very curious. Now, the time span here is much different than Laplace's war itself, of course, but it does kind of make me wonder if a lot of the stuff with the prejudice of the demons and Petagus is all tied together. And yes, Servarl actively going with that, with Petagus, could be this prejudice back here. It kind of makes me wonder if the reason why Petagus doesn't want... I don't believe this is the case, but it does make me kind of wonder if the whole reason why Petagus doesn't let demons onto Chaos Breaker is specifically because Servarl doesn't like him. It does make you kind of wonder there. But that also makes me question, how old is Servarl? And is her pact that she has with Petagus, is it something that's keeping her young? He's saying right here is something that's been lost over generations and generations, over 4,000 years. How long do they live? He says, no matter how long lived your race is. I'd imagine that Silvaro's been around for a long time. It kind of makes me wonder if these people are actually very long-lived, thousands of years. It's just simply, like he said, just mentioning Petagoose makes them shut up. Makes them shut up real quick. They're not going to bring up green hair. They're not going to bring up Roxy being there because Petagoose sent him here. Shut up. It's Petagoose's people. Curious. Chapter 4, Christening. This is where things get like, again, I got a little emotional because I'm like, I feel bad. I feel bad now. The next morning, the villagers happily guide them as they depart the village. For some reason, they gave them a set of packed meals for everyone, some bundle of leaves that may be medicine, and a carved wooden charm figure. He called it a figure, but it wasn't anything complex. Just a simple wooden stick with plumage stuck to it, probably from the Skyfolk. It's interesting because later on they do get into what this wooden stick is, but never what the medicine is. It makes me wonder if the medicine is for the flowers they'll run into later on. So the charm was to ward the beast, and the medicine was to ward the sleepiness. Maybe it was an idol of this land's god, passed down through ages, like the sky god. While it may have been simple crafted, its sheer pricelessness would make Zenobia weep in joy. Reus gave his thanks, and while they wouldn't understand his words, they responded by folding their wings and crossing their fists in front of their chests. Aluce Hill was a tranquil place. The breeze billowing down its gentle incline was chilly, but the weather was clear, and its slope was decorated with a garden of white flowers. Sieg was sleeping soundly, and the rest of them were fighting off a wave of drowsiness. Oh, right. All of them getting sleepy, despite having a good night's rest, couldn't be coincidence. Reus gave everyone a kikar fruit he had prepared beforehand. He took another look at the garden of white flowers on the slope. The pollen released from those ferocious flowers had a strong soporific effect. When squinting even further, Reus could see a single creature lying in wait. Camouflaged against the garden, it was a monster called the Heaven's Glider. It hid amongst the sleep-inducing white flowers and attacked anyone who fell asleep after venturing too close. It was small compared to the other monsters, only about 2 meters long. It looked like a furry lizard. Its forearms were webbed like a bat, and its tail had a venomous stinger. It was a more cautious monster than others, and wouldn't dare move on a prey that wasn't sleeping. Yeah, it could be called a cower. Despite Sieg being sound asleep, it didn't attack them and let them pass. Very interesting. It's kind of like similar to that one that Reus ran into back in that one village. It was that girl that Orsted told him to go save. And it had like this idea that there's this poison that's like going into the people. And in order to cure the poison, they had to get these flowers. And the flowers were being guarded by this lizard. So the lizard was purposely like creating this concept there that was poisoning the people. And they had to get the cure, and then they died from it. Like some way of drawing them in. Very much so like a spiderweb setup. It's very cool. And so, yeah, when they're not affected by the thing, they literally just walk right by. Like, it still has probably teeth. It still has a venomous stinger. But as they walk by, it's literally going, yeah, you're not affected by it. Don't. Just act cool. Just act cool. I mean, granted, 2 meters long is not that big. And so it's not like this thing is going to be possibly something that could even fight multiple things. Like, it's so comparably small, it would probably only look for smaller prey if things weren't affected by it. The sedative effect of the white flowers lasted about an hour. According to Orsted, you'd never wake up from falling asleep in the garden. But the effects didn't last long if you got away quickly. Still, Sieg was only a month old. Once they got far enough away, Reus casted an antidote spell on him, for good measure. The fruits they ate had a strong stimulant effect, but giving it to a child sounded dangerous. Good idea there. There's medicines that work for adults, but not for children. It's too strong. After a bit longer, Edis gave them a signal, and they all crouched down in response. Atop the hill was a giant bird. It could be mistaken for a dinosaur, if it weren't for its feathers. It must have been about 10 meters tall. Enormous. That's a big one. I think that's what they called gigantic jaw, if I'm not mistaken. It was the strongest monster on this hill. In terms of rank, it was about an A rank. The residents of the Divine Continent feared encountering this monster. If it appeared near a town, they would have to send all hands out to fend it off, or in the case of a smaller village, potentially evacuate the entire population. Travelers were even given charms imbued with a sole prayer of not running across it, which could possibly be the charm that you got. It's like one of those moments where he's like, damn, that thing's huge. Yeah, the gigantic jaw. Everybody around here fears this thing. It causes people to flee in terror. And some towns even give you a... Oh, that's what this thing is. The power of Skyfolk compels you. The power of Skyfolk compels you. That was stupid. Oh, Rudy, look. At Sylphie's suggestion, Reese looked past the monster to see a stone shrine. Their destination, he assumed. What should we do? Fight? The monster hadn't spotted them yet, so sneaking was an option. But Reese had a hunch that this was their territory. Given that they showed no signs of leaving, and it was possibly an A rank, it wouldn't be a pushover. Reese gave Edis a nod. She looked like she heard him loud and clear. Even though he hadn't said a word, they would be taking it down. They still hadn't done anything trial-worthy up here, and Reese got the feeling they'd have a failing grade if they avoided it. You couldn't even kill that one bird? You just strolled up in there? What challenge was that? Do it again. Do it again. And don't use your elevator this time. That does make you kind of wonder how Petagoose got up there. Did he climb? Was that what those little steps was they found when they first arrived there? There was like those imprints for somebody that climbed. I think he implied that a human did that. But I mean, people could have thought that he was a human doing it. But yeah, I kind of wonder at this point how he got up there. Did he use earth magic, kind of similar to Rias, but by himself, a stone pillar? I don't know that he would have that mana capability. But I mean, he could have done something similar. He could have just launched himself up there. Many ways. And this will draw its attention. I'll bind its feet. And once I do, Sylphie and Roxy will attack it together. I don't know if he'll take it down in one hit, so aim for the wings first. If it looks like we can finish it off at that point, Edis will strike it with a final blow. If it looks like it'll escape my Quagmire, Edis will buy us time while I finish it off, okay? Got it. Edis confirmed as she leapt into the fray. She looked like a dog who'd been... She looked like a dog, sick of being told to stay put. Turning to the other two, Roxy and Sylphie both ran to take positions, supporting Edis from either flank. Reese forgot how fast Sylphie was. He doubted that she was fully recovered from giving birth, but maybe that sort of recovery was something healing magic could speed along. Edis roared, and the monster met it with his own. Its bellowing threatened to rupture eardrums, but Edis showed no fear. She would not be stopped. She charged the monster, barreling towards it, then halted for a sidestep. The next moment, the monster's beak was digging into the soil where she was standing a second before. It spread its wings and kicked off the ground to charge at incredible speed. Edis struck back as she dodged, and a spray of blood suddenly launched from the monster's maw. It had noticed her, and its size meant the neck was too high up, so her strike failed to kill it. They'd have to stick to the plan and bring it down so they can beat the crap out of it. Quagmire. As the monster swung around to face Edis and ready to charge, its feet sank into the soil. It tried to flap its wings to escape, but Roxy and Sylphie followed up with Icicle Break and Sonic Blast. The spells crushed the beast's flailing wings, causing it to thrash around. The final thing to flash before the creature's eyes was a single swordswoman, a red-haired warrior who swung her blade high above her head. With one terse breath, she struck Sword of Light, the hidden technique of the Sword God style, created to defeat not just humans, but any living being in a single blow. There was no sound. Edis's blade simply cleaved the monster's head in two, straight down the middle. As its eyes rolled back, its body still twists and lashed mindlessly. One hit would normally do the trick, but monsters started posing problems once they reached a certain size. It's very interesting, the idea of like how big it is and its brain itself, so much mass, I guess. Because it's sort of implying, because like he's here in a minute, he actually does blast the brain. So it's not simply an idea that the rest of the body is still fidgeting, still has muscle movement happening, still the nerves are kind of triggering the muscles to move or whatever. But more so the idea the brain being such a large mass is still computing to the rest of the body in some way. Stone Cannon. Stone Cannon slammed into the monster's cranium. The attack wedged itself into the wound that Edis opened, shredding the monster's brain. Bone and gray matter spewed behind the monster with a resounding splat. The monster fell lifelessly, as though the strings that were pulling it had been cut. Graphic. Graphic. Edis watched with caution before deciding the battle was over. She waved at Rudius, and Roxy lifted her staff, signaling that she was okay as well. Sylphie was looking towards the monster with great interest, as though she had never seen one this big. In the end, it went well. They gained up on it and emerged without a scratch. Things sure hadn't gone smooth back when he was traveling the Demon Continent. Edis and Rudius had grown stronger. Suddenly, Sig woke up from his sleep and started fussing around. Aw, poor baby, are you hungry? Or do you not like being on your daddy's back? Are you cold? Aw, if you are, sorry. We'll be back home safe and sound soon enough. Just then, Reese realized the look on his face had dramatically changed. His wife's could tell as they approached too. He gritted his teeth, and he spaced out in horror, his gaze fixed on the defeated monster. It was lying in the quagmire, lifeless. Sylphie noticed it. The problem wasn't the monster. It was something at Reese's feet. A steaming puddle had formed. Steam was wafting from Reese's back as well, curiously warm. Oh, looks like he got you, Roxy said, trying to lighten the mood. Yes, she was right. Sig got him. All over his back, in fact. To think, my own son, right in the back. I let down my guard. Sylphie, When you get home, tell Lucy and the others that I love them. I wanted to see them all grown up. But now, they'll have to look out for each other as siblings to live on. Their old man will be having a cup of tea with Grandpa by the pearly gates. Rudy, stop being dramatic. Let's sit down and take off your robe and the magic armor already. We gotta wash them up before the odor sticks. Okay, fine. Rudius didn't get to finish off his monologue. The shrine was right in front of them. They arrived at their destination. That was like... When I first read that little segment, I'm like, what is it implying here? Oh, okay. Like, I'm trying to get... Like, I knew it was a fake out. And it was especially the fact that at some point Roxy kind of jokes in with it. But it's like, what is it? Oh, okay. All right. I get it. Joke was almost going to miss me. Storky. Much funnier than the fake out for Talhan way back in the Hydra fight. That's for dang sure. The shrine was a bit small, about 1 meter tall and 2 meters wide. Its stone double doors were half ajar, wide enough to barely fit one person through. On the door was an emblem Rudius was familiar with. Yes, an emblem that he had been wearing as of late. The one that looked like a dragon from a distance. The emblem of the dragon folk. These were dragon folk ruins. Finally get some actual dragon folk ruins that Rudius runs into. Very, very cool, because this is something that Oldius had found some. Oldius had found these, and now here he's finally discovering one, which maybe kind of wish that he spent more time down there to see if he can find some information, because again, that was one of the things that Oldius was talking about, that he discovered some dragon folk ruins and they had information about how to get to the man god. All this information, all this stuff that they were studying and looking into, he looked in that information and found something. That's how he discovered the whole idea of the keys and everything. So yeah, kind of sucks that he didn't look more. But it's interesting again that it starts here. It starts here as Dragonfolk runes. And then as Rudius goes in there, it looks like something different. It looks like the runes in Pedagus's floating fortress, the Chaos Breaker. Which again does make you kind of wonder, is it all Dragonfolk ruins? Is just there Rudius is simply saying these look similar to this? But it's always been Dragonfolk ruins. Very curious. But again, I think it's all Skyfolk stuff. I think the stuff inside there and in the Chaos Breaker, I think that's all Skyfolk stuff. And that the Dragonfolk, or at least Pedagus himself, is co-opting all the information for himself. Or at least whoever preceded Pedagus. Or at least maybe informed him on this stuff. Rudius could see some sort of altar beside the ruins, but it was run down and covered in moss. Perhaps this is some sort of magical implement. Something to hide the ruins from view. Compared to the ancient teleportation circles Rudius had grown accustomed to seeing, this one had a different air about it. People long ago must have made pilgrimages here. The altar wasn't the only difference here. Some details about the shrine itself differed from the ruins that housed those circles. The ancient teleportation circles that he knew were single-story buildings with a basement. From what he could tell looking through the doorway, this shrine had stairs. Stairs that descended into darkness. When he tried knocking on the door with his gauntlet, the sound echoed for quite a while. It must go deep into the earth. They were supposed to do a baptism here, but Rudius wondered if this place had anyone living inside. There had been a monster waltzing around the doorstep, one that the locals dreaded. Anyone home? There was no reply. Rudius turned to give the others a confused look. Get in there already! Pardon me. And it's like, get in, what the hell are you doing? Go! What are you waiting for, Rudius? Rudius took out a lantern spirit scroll and illuminated their descent. The stairwell was lined with a layer of dust, so it must not have got much use lately. But to make it regular cleaning, as there was no moss growing anywhere. It might not be homey, but it still had subtle signs of human life. One step at a time, they descended the stairwell. Right behind him was Edis, Roxy, and Sylphie. It is kind of interesting that he's noting the idea it's getting cleaned because there's no moss. It has a slight layer of dust, so somebody hasn't been here lately, but it at least is implying that somebody comes here. There's still signs of life coming in here every now and then. Which, yes, can imply that maybe the Sky Folks come there on a regular basis. Maybe they fly over there, drop down in there, check things out, clean it out or whatever, keep it set. Because, again, if this is a place that is very special, possibly very special to Pedagus, possibly special to the Dragon Folks, that it seems like they revere in some way, they might want to keep it kept. And so they might actually appear here on a regular basis. Or Pedagus himself comes here on a regular basis. Who knows? Sieg was still on Rudius's back. And while he considered having Edis take lead, they reached the end of the staircase. Yet another half-cracked door was before them. This time, though, a faint light peeked through. Was someone inside? A monster that used light to lure its prey? Rudius was getting nervous, but he'd have to handle it. I'll scout ahead. I'll go with you. After passing Sieg off to Sylphie, Edis and Rudius stepped through the door. They found themselves in a large, wide-open space. It was almost like a plaza, supported by a handful of thick pillars. Reese got the strange feeling that they'd walked into a sacred place. He also got a hunch this was less like a Dragonfolk ruins and more like Pedagoose's floating fortress. Again, there was that idea that, like, yeah, technically that means that probably the Chaos Breaker used to be here, and these are probably runes that used to be somehow connected to it. The thickness and placement of the pillars seemed especially similar to the floating fortress's audience chamber. This place really must have drawn inspiration from Pedagoose. I think it's the other way around, Rudius. Other way around, Rudius. Candle stands adorned the walls, dim in the room's vastness. They weren't alone. At the opposite end of the room was some sort of fountain, and it cast a pale light that illuminated the entire place. If they approached, would a monster come out and attack? Or would they inspect it to find HP and MP restored? You gotta touch the fountain, get restored. There's your quick save point right there too. Whichever the case, a pathway that passed the fountain led even further into the shrine. Reese didn't get a sense of danger in the room, so he called in Roxy and Sylphie. However, before he could, he heard multiple sets of footsteps. They sound like they came from the pathway next to the fountain. Reese defended the door, while Edis stepped forward and readied her blade. Reese hoped they were friendlies, but he didn't rule out a temporary retreat. The owners of the footsteps revealed themselves. One look told Rudius they were trouble. It also told him they might be reasoned with. Across from them was a group of 3 people in masks. Silvaro, Armanfi, and Nanahoshi. Again, interesting that Nanahoshi's there. I think looking back, this is probably something that Nanahoshi really wanted to be a part of.
You arrived quickly, Rudius Grey Rat.
And then Pedagoose appeared.
I heard that a gigantic jaw was roaming the area, but I should have known that would hardly be much of a trial for you.
Reese wondered if he was on a hidden camera or something. He assumed this was a trial, but the guy who told him to do it was at the finish line. Was someone going to point to a corner and tell him to smile? You're on hidden camera, Rudius. What are you feeling like? Dorky. So,
what are you dawdling for? Bring the baby inside already.
Despite his confusion, Pedagoose commanded Rudius as though this was no surprise. He stood waiting by the side of the fountain. Rudius didn't know what was going on. At least it seemed like they didn't need to fight. Nanahoshi was here, as though she was one of Pedagoose's familiars, but he wouldn't have brought her along if they planned to fight. Yeah, I don't think so. But did Rudius have it backwards? Could he have brought Nanahoshi because he intended to fight? Maybe because Rudius wouldn't want her to get hurt? No, that was ridiculous. This is the great Lord Pedagoose. He wouldn't stoop to such a cowardly trick, would he? Rudius decided to allow Sylphie and Roxy inside. The moment Roxy entered, Pedagoose furrowed his brow for a moment. Poor Roxy. Poor Roxy. Quit hating on Roxy, Pedagoose. This is like the only reason I don't like Pedagoose is because he doesn't like Roxy. There's the only bad, the only negative for Pedagoose, the fact that he's discriminatory. It's like his major, massive flaw. Again, I understand why he's, if it's the case because of Laplace's war, I can understand why he is discriminatory. It's one of those things of like, you understand like this thing breeds this. It's an understanding. It's not to make it right. It's an understanding of why he is that way. But again, there's a side of me that kind of wonders, this dude should probably be smart enough that he would acknowledge that Roxy has nothing to do with that war. So what is it about demons specifically that it's so ingrained in his head? Is it some sort of aspect that's within him that makes him hate? Like it's almost like a reverse of Orsted's curse, where Orsted makes people hate him and distrust him. Does Pedagoose have like a curse that makes him hate demons? It does make you wonder. I wouldn't doubt that. If something like Orsted's curse exists, something like that can exist. Lord Pedagoose, a demon. Silvaro's tone was disapproving. This was something that Reese hoped that she'd overlook. This wasn't the floating fortress after all.
Very well.
Still, Pedagoose was such a magnanimous monarch. A real magmo. Magmo. The fountain looked large enough for a full-grown adult to bathe in. Close up, it was actually more of an oval-shaped stone bathtub. A magic circle had been carved in the bottom of the tub, and that was the source of the fountain's light. The light diffused through the water, lending the whole room an eerie glow. It had the surreal beauty of a nighttime pool, but it was clear that this pool was some sort of magical implement. The magical implement appeared to be incomplete. There was some more magic circles carved into the stone with the tub, but those weren't lit up. There was also a few recessions around the tub that seemed designed to hold something, but nothing accompanied them. It was probably missing a few parts. This is all very interesting. When I first read this, I really was drawing a blank here. Again, it's obviously implying this thing is for something important. Later on, we find out that it kind of gives some sort of indication or blessing there, and that could be somehow tied to this. What exactly is it tied to? Is it something that they used before? Is this a ritual for creating, I don't know, the whole aspect of them reincarnating themselves? This could possibly be something of a really important ritual that they've done sometime before. And that's why it's being kept protected, being kept in such a secluded location, and a location that is, only surrounded by people that revere Petagoose in some way. Is something that could possibly be very important. That's why it's sealed away in here. And again, obviously implying this place is probably hidden. With that whole shrine outside of it, that thing is probably designed to hide it. It's just Petagoose probably came there beforehand, turned it off, and they all went down there and waited for Rudius. And then he shows up and goes, oh, wow, the door's open, this shrine's off the side, but it's not activated, and this is typically would probably hide it. It was probably hidden. So this has to be a very important bathtub. It's a very important bathtub. But I'd be curious what all it does. It seems like it's obviously altered. The question I really have is this its incomplete self that has always been? And Petagoose has no idea about what else this thing could do? Or could this have been altered by Petagoose when they came down there to not do a lot of the other stuff that it does, but merely just do this one thing, this one task that he has to do here? It's very interesting. What is this? This is the baptismal font. Savarl answered before walking up to Sylphie. The baby. Savarl curtly commanded as she offered both hands to Sylphie. A shiver ran through Sylphie's body. She looked back and forth between Savarl's hands and Rudius. What? Is Lord Petagoose going to baptize my son himself? Yes. Is that a problem? Oh, not at all. Perish the thought. Did that mean Petagoose came all the way here, beat them, they made a grand entrance just so he can perform the baptism? Well, this meant that he had no backup here. If Petagoose wanted to do anything to Sieg, it would have been easier for him to do it at the floating fortress. Reese didn't think that he chose to strangle Sieg or drown him. Then again, taking him on in the floating fortress would have broken some furniture. So it was possible that he lured Rudius down here to the Divine Continent to metaphorically take this outside. I think Rudius is wrong here. Rudius is thinking this in order to ease his mind. He wouldn't have come down. It would have been much easier up there. But yeah, up there he would have broken some furniture. No, Rudius, if you're going by that train of thought, now is the easiest time to attack you. Now is the easiest time to attack you. Why? Yes, up there, and we don't know if there could be somewhere else in here. Up there, he does have his familiars. But up there, you had Orsted. Down here, you don't have Orsted. So yes, by this train of thought, he's actually much more capable of doing anything if he was going to do anything to him. So bad way of thinking, Rudius. Rudius discarded the thought. Petagoose had done so much for him up until now. He had to trust him here. Sylphie. Giving Sylphie a look, she gasped for a moment. But she took a deep, determined breath and handed Sieg over to Savarl. Savarl gently wrapped Sieg in her arms and wings, walked to Petagoose, then took a knee. She reverently offered Sieg to Petagoose. Petagoose settled down on the altar, then looked closely at the baby before him.
Green hair, slightly pointed ears, eyes like a piercing flash of light. Yet he appears gentle overall. A good kid.
Rudius agreed, but he was getting nervous. Could this baptism show Sieg was really Laplace and then get him killed on the spot? It wasn't like Rudius didn't trust Petagoose, but this was scary. He couldn't bear to watch. He peered at it through his demon eye of foresight. In it, he seen Petagoose scoop up some water in one hand. A second later, it came to pass. Petagoose lifted the water between tightly cupped hands, crossed his arms, pushed his fists into his shoulder, and held that pose in silence for a few seconds. Then slowly, he opened his hands and brushed Sieg's neck.
In the name of the Dragon King Petagoose, I grant my blessing to this baby, this egg of mankind. By my hand I baptize thee, and in my name I christen thee, so that this child may break out of the shell and grow strong, wise, and gentle. I bestow upon him the name Saladin.
The water on Petagoose's hand glowed a faint yellow. The water continued to glow for some time. Once Petagoose saw the light had faded, he lifted the baby up and handed him to Savarl. Savarl reverently accepted him and carried him gently as she stood. Slowly she returned to Sylphie and offered her the baby. Sylphie looked into Sieg's face, but he didn't seem different. He just looked at Sylphie and Rudius with a blank expression, just like a month-old baby normally would. His hair was still green too. So what just happened? How dare you, Rudius? How dare you, Rudius? So, Petagoose rose with a grunt and casually walked towards Rudius. He uttered something right into Rudius's face that shook him to the core.
I don't know what's gotten into your head, but I have long known that baby is not Laplace.
Rudius took 5 full seconds to understand the words that came out of his mouth. You have?
Aramanthe is my eyes. I would never mistake the sight of Laplace. The hue of his green hair is entirely different. His eye color differs too. His mana fails to impress. And he lacks the abominable curse, that which makes one shudder from the bottom of their heart.
Very good point. I don't know why that never dawned on me before. Oh, I feel kind of stupid. But again, I don't feel stupid technically, because my whole point was that my theory was that it's not necessarily like they're born with everything. They're ready to go. Boom. Comes out and goes, let's do it. Ha 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 ha. Like it does a Kishirika laugh out of nowhere. My whole point has been more the idea that a child is born that is a capable vessel, and the aspects come in there, and the soul comes in there over time. They're not Laplace the moment they pop out and they're already ready to go. And so, yeah, technically, I don't feel as foolish, because it still goes to my theory that I don't feel that it goes that wrong. I don't feel like I was that wrong. But yes, if it's true, what this is implying is Petagoose believes that when that baby comes out, they are Laplace. 100%. 100. Which would mean the way you would know is put a person before it. Take that child and walk down the street. It implies that I think these people would shudder at the sight of that child. And that is probably why Laplace, no matter what, ends up being a bad guy. Rudius would have a massive uphill battle if it was really Laplace and he tried to raise it to enjoy life and not harm humans, because they would have that curse. Yes, the curse that he bestowed upon those spears and gave them to the Superds. That fear, that curse. Interesting. I don't know why that never really clicked for me. But again, I assume that it's something that comes over time. But yes, the mana failing to impress does make sense. That I should have known. Well, again, it's not like they talked about it. That yes, technically Orsted, if he's looking at the child, if he's able to see its mana, he could technically see that. But I don't think they ever implied that Orsted could see mana of any way. It's implying that Petagoose can see their mana, which is very interesting. It's very interesting that it seems to imply that, no, it could be Aramanthe. He says, Aramanthe is my eyes, which could imply the idea of, I've seen his hair color, his eye color is different too. But he's specifically saying his mana fails to impress. How could Petagoose know that unless he can see mana, or Aramanthe maybe has a demon eye to see mana? Could you imagine Aramanthe having a demon eye and he's in the floating fortress where no demons are allowed? Could be, though. Could be. Aramanthe could have the ability to see the mana. Very curious. That's very curious. So, Petagoose knew from the moment Sieg was born that he wasn't Laplace.
You seem to pay too much heed, so I called you to the shrine. This water is made to change color if certain people make contact with it. If that person had been Laplace, it would have glowed red.
But it changed yellow, right?
He's no blessed child, but the Laplace factor he carries is strong. Have you noticed his vigor, or his unusual strength?
I have. It was strange how strong he was. That explained it. Being good health was hardly a bad thing. Still, he wasn't Laplace, which was a relief. This was the point where I was like, I feel bad. Like, I feel embarrassed for Rudius right here. Like, I legitimately, right here, reading this, I felt embarrassed for Rudius. If I was Rudius standing there, I would feel embarrassed. Why it feels that way is, again, I acknowledge what Rudius' mindset is because it's my own. The first time he met Petagoose, he asked, do you have a child? Is that child a boy? When you have a boy, bring him to me. And again, this is after this whole idea of them walking under that thing, and it's got Sylphie and him, and that glow came off of him and everything. It implied this idea that he wants to see them, and there was a fear that he's going to do something to them. I understand what Rudius is thinking here. That is what Petagoose is after. But obviously, things have changed over time. Rudius and him have become friends. He has become a strong ally to him. They have drank tea together. Rudius has protected this guy, Zenoba, that is Petagoose' friend, like bestest friend. Like, Petagoose loves Zenoba, and Rudius protected him. I think Petagoose really does favor Rudius. It's obviously seen right here. Rudius came into that throne room, that audience chamber, And he said, what are you doing here? You told me to bring your kid. Here it is. It's Laplace. It's not Laplace, right? We had him check it. All this kind of stuff. Pegasus right there, I, at this point, would believe that, yes, he's sitting there going, I was going to name the child. And he probably did have intentions of checking to see if it was Laplace back there. I'm going to name it, but he's also going to check it. Like, I think both are true. But now it's just like, okay, he's not Laplace. That would have complicated things, but I'm still going to name it. But Rudius looks at him like, don't touch my child. I will fight you, Pegasus. And Pegasus is sitting up there. I mean, I just was going to name it. It's not Laplace. Chill out. He's on guard. Rudius right here is on guard. He's paranoid. They both look afraid right now. Let me fix that. I think Pegasus at that point chose, let's fix that. He's obviously concerned if it's Laplace or not. He doesn't know. He said he had Orsid check. Orsid knows too. He's like, yeah, you know, right? Pegasus is looking at Orsid like, you know, right? He's acting crazy. Yeah, we both know it's not Laplace. But he's never going to trust me. There's a semblance here that Pegasus realized he is never going to trust me around that child. He's always going to fear that I'm going to come after that child. Let me make it clear for him. Rudius, go on a trial. Go to Aluce Hill. Go there and baptize him. This was all for him to go, look, Rudius, it's not Laplace. I know it's not Laplace. Now you see that it's not Laplace. I can see it, but you're not convinced yourself. Your wife is not convinced herself. Sylphie, even after them meeting in that room, is still going, I kind of wish that he took the child. Is it Laplace? Is Rudius going to have to kill my child? Is Rudius going to try to kill my child? They're all fearful that it's Laplace. Pegasus goes, I'll fix this. I'll show you guys it's not Laplace. It's like Rudius is afraid of him thinking it's Laplace this entire time, and Pegasus is going, I know it's not Laplace, but he's not convinced, and we're never going to get past this unless I convinced him it's not Laplace. So I'm going to send him here just to show him that I'm not a threat. And that's where it hurts. And even when I was reading it, like I said, that's the embarrassment and the hurt. That's where it hurts. Rudius, look, I'm not going to kill your child. We're still good. It's okay. Let it go. Ouch. I still think if it was Laplace, he's going to want to kill it. But at least here it's like a chill, dude. But it is cool also right here. It's implying that possibly this fountain can reveal things about them. Like this fountain glows different colors, possibly depending on what they have. It's red if it's Laplace. It's probably not like detected. It is Laplace. Red, red, red. It's probably more of a thing of what is inside of Laplace, the aspects themselves or whatever, makes that red tint. And maybe which makes you kind of wonder how they know that. It makes you kind of wonder why they know that. Probably able to detect the factors themselves. But he says he's no blessed child, but the Laplace factor he carries is strong. So the yellow is an indication that it is a Laplace factor. The Laplace factor makes it yellow, which is probably makes me believe that this tub was probably created by the same guy that created the pillar. The archway in the Chaos Breaker. They probably made this too. That dude's creating a bunch of really cool stuff here. Magical implements and stuff. He's no blessed child. That kills my theory I had last Mushoku Monday. And it was mostly a joke. For those that missed it, I was implying this idea that what if they're the same thing? Like what if, because it was during the time where we revealed that, yes, C can squeeze and break Rudius's finger. And I was thinking at that time, what if these are all, these aspects, these factors, maybe they're what the blessed childs are, the cursed and blessed childs are. The idea that when somebody is found to be a blessed child or a cursed child, these little kind of effects in the mana flow itself, what if it's just a factor and they don't know it's a Laplace factor? They call it blessed child, cursed child because they don't know about the factors. Again, we didn't learn about the factors until we learned about all this aspects of them, flowing through time and him reincarnating and stuff. So here he's, at least in this translation, sometimes it's hard to trust 7C sometimes. Here in this translation, Pegasus is saying he's distinguishing between the two of them. These are different things. Which, again, technically makes sense because, like we've mentioned before, Zenith and Aluce, they are both designated cursed blessed childs because of this effect from being inside those crystals. Now, that is not to mean that these factors can't be trapped in the crystals and thus fed into the person themselves, and that's how they get it, but you get my point. He's distinguishing.
Have you not noticed his vigor or his unusual strength?
I have. It was strange how strong he was. That explained it. Being good health was hardly a bad thing. Still, he wasn't Laplace, which was a relief. Doesn't that mean that you had Armanfi crash Sig's birth for absolutely no reason?
For that reason, I apologize. Though by coincidence, it appears I summoned you at a poor time. Though it would have been excellent time if your child really had been Laplace.
Again, right there, he's still saying, yes, I am going to come after Laplace. Again, but he's not. This one is not. Chill. It kind of noting here of a mistake. Interesting to have Petagoose in front of Rudius admit a mistake. It was a bad time. Bad timing. I acknowledge. Rudius really wished he had mentioned that earlier. So, what did we come all this way for?
For the baptism. Long ago, Ashra Kingdom had a tradition in which the person tasked with granting a child their name would give that child a baptism and christening in the land of their birth. In addition, the parents would journey with their newborn to that land, though it's a long-forgotten tradition by now.
In which the person tasked with granting a child their name would give that child a baptism and christening in the land of their birth. This is the land of Petagoose's birth. The first time I read that wrong, and the idea that it was possibly Rudius or Sylphie's birth area or something like that. It was going to be some weird thing that would kind of complicate things. No, the person giving the baptism, they bring them to the land of their birth. So this implies that Petagoose was born here. He was born on the Divine Continent, or at least within the lands of these ruins. I would assume it's just on the Divine Continent in general, because he's not that old. So that's very, very curious. And it makes sense that he would get this tradition. Probably got this tradition from the guy that used to that he helped with, saving the Ashra Kingdom. Probably got that tradition from them. He has strong ties with the old Ashra Kingdom, so that makes sense. But again, I think a lot of this has to do with him trying to dispel that fear that Rudius has. Granting their name?
Don't give me that dumbstruck look. You once promised me, did you not, that you would bring your son for me to name. You may henceforth call this child Saladin.
Rudius forgot, but he had a feeling he might have. When Petagoose told him to bring his child, he may have said that. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. But again, I thought that was just, at the time, because they didn't have a bond back then. At the time, I assume he was saying that because he wanted an excuse to have Rudius bring it to him. Now, at the time, if it wasn't for the sake of him assuming that Rudius could birth Laplace, it could have been to an idea of him just expecting that whoever Rudius births, if it's a boy, he will become a very strong warrior, and he'd want to name him as a hero, or assume that person could eventually one day aid him in fighting Laplace. But this child...
No need to thank me.
Petagoose declared as he stood up.
It is but a small gift that I grant you.
Sig already had a perfectly good name. Sigheart. Rudius was at a loss. Talk about an offering he can't refuse. Oh well. Sigheart, Saladin, Grey Rat then. It kind of rolled off the tongue, and sounded tough too. Knowing the name came from Petagoose himself gave it real punch. Hell yeah! If you could flaunt the fact that you were named by Petagoose himself, hell yeah! Sorry, Dad, I'm gonna go around and refer to myself as Saladin, named after Petagoose himself. And that could possibly help. That could actually help alleviate a lot, if there was going to be any problems with discrimination. That could actually help alleviate a lot of that. And that, oh my gosh, this is just door opened, can of worms. That opened a massive can of worms. Okay, yes. My initial thought here is that, yes, having Petagoose name him would help him escape a lot of discrimination. People are going to respect him more than anything. But if Sigheart, Saladin Grey Rat, becomes a very powerful warrior, becomes very well known, and again, living off that fact that he is named after Petagoose, he could become a very respected person. And in doing so, could possibly help alleviate future persecution of people with green hair. Yes, the Superds. Yes, Rijerd. all that stuff. It could help with a lot of that stuff. This whole process here has essentially alleviated a lot of the fears that Sylphie has, because in naming him, she won't have to worry as much, and he'll end up being a lot more accepted than she thinks it will. And in the future, she won't have to fear birthing a child with green hair. Sieghart did perfectly well. I love it. Pedagogus is doing so much here that I think Rudius is completely missing. There's so much happening here that Pedagogus has done for him here that Rudius is not even catching. Or I'm just missing the ball a lot. Knowing the name came from Pedagogus himself gave it real punch. Not bad as not bad got. Sig gained a new name, and their baptism journey came to an end. After returning to the floating fortress via teleportation magic, Rudius felt like they can finally relax and go home. But Pedagogus commanded them to the throne room one last time. Oh my gosh, this part. Wasn't to my theory, but it could still happen. She might still bestow that information to him before she leaves. Roxy wasn't permitted due to being a demon, so she went home early. At least it implies that they at least let her kind of go. I mean, she went through that once before, but yeah. Just permitted him briefly to go. Poor Roxy. Rudius considered sending Sylphie home as well, but she had other ideas and stuck with him. Edda stood behind him, arms crossed. She'd be there no matter what. Before them stood 12 spirits and Pedagogus.
I believe we got sidetracked enough. Let us broach the real issue.
Rudius wondered if they had a real issue, as Pedagogus spoke from his throne. He must have had business beyond Sig. Pedagogus looked down with a stern glare at Rudius, completely unlike he'd ever shown before.
Rudius Grey Rat, I've heard that you formed an alliance with Etoff. Regardless of the forthcoming battle with Applause, why would you speak to a woman such as her without so much consulting me?
Well, you see,
But that I shall let pass.
It's like ask a question that you don't want an answer to. Ask a question that you don't want an answer to.
I can stomach the indignation. In light of the determination you showed earlier, it is water on the bridge. After all, I always intended to fight Laplace on my own. There's one more matter.
That's interesting. Like, I think that is sort of a Rudius. What the hell, dude? I don't really care, but what the hell, dude? Like, it doesn't bother me, but what the hell, dude? What the WTF? But it's funny because he's like, I don't really care. I intend to fight Laplace on my own. It sort of implies the idea that Pedagogus was intending Rudius to join him to fight Laplace. I was planning on joining you guys to fight Laplace. And now you're going to ally with her. I don't want to fight alongside her. No matter. I'm fighting him on my own anyways. I already intended to fight him on my own anyways. Doesn't matter. I think he just wanted to let Rudius know that he's a little bit miffed. I'm not mad, but I'm mad. Pedagogus signaled something with a jerk of his chin. A girl, about 16 years old, with a white mask, stepped forward. She was a girl who, as time passed, didn't age. She now looked younger than both Sylphie and Rudius. That is an actually interesting thing when I read that. I'm like, that's an interesting note that I don't think we ever kind of acknowledge at this point. That yes, when Rudius first met Nanahoshi, he was much younger than her. In, like, body, physically. He was much younger than her. And then, like, cut to now, she's still the same. And Rudius is now, like, 22, 23. Like, he's gotten much older than her at this point. And it's like that, the whole thing of, like, okay, previous world, he's much older than her. They transport to this world, book, and then they meet each other, book. And then now here, it's like she just stays at this one point. It's so sad. It kind of hits home how the fact that she's never changed. Nanahoshi Shizuka stepped forward and removed her mask. Then, with a conflicted expression, spoke up. I completed the magic circle to return home.
I see. Finally, huh?
Orsted spoke up from behind Rudius, seemingly materialized out of nowhere. Nanahoshi looked to Orsted as she clenched a fist in front of her chest. It's so important to her. It's like this massive, massive achievement for her. Holy crap. I wonder, though. It's like, I wonder if she can leave. Because, again, did Rudius told her? Huh. Rudius gave her the future diary. In the future diary, it indicated that she at some point found out, realized she couldn't leave. She realized at some point she could not leave. And she gave up. She still is doing all of this fully knowing that. So did she figure out a way to counter that? Huh. I hope this isn't a plot hole. I hope this isn't a plot hole, because I would assume that Rudius' first response to this is, did she figure a way around it? What did she do that's different? The diary doesn't say anything about what she did, just that she figured out how to do it and she failed and she gave up. So knowing that, because she read it, knowing that, how is she so confident she figured it out? I think she implied this idea that she was destined to stay there to do something. And that was this whole thing about the whole future and coming back in time and all that kind of stuff. She implied that she was stuck in a loop. She's predestined that she's supposed to do something, and that's what got her into looking into the future and why she was here. And that's why I expected when she came back up in the previous chapters, we're finally going to get into what she figured out. Like, she's probably going to lay out, I've been looking into all this stuff from the future diary, and this is the final say. This is what's going on. I figured it out. Because again, that diary implied that she's stuck in whatever this is, and she cannot leave. So now she apparently thinks she can, when her future self couldn't. What's different? I hope that's not a hole. We'll find out in the next chapter, but I hope they're not just gonna go, oh yeah, I figured it out, here we go, let's do it. That she's gonna go, yeah, I know that the book says this, but I found it. And that could be simply being that maybe she assumes that this future self in the future diary from Bruce's future self, maybe she failed and I'm gonna succeed. That things are different, that just doesn't have the full context. Maybe she discovered a block and she figured out how to get around that block and goes, oh yeah, that was probably the block that blocked this other self. We'll see. We'll see. But yeah, she's finally, I mean, putting that aside, she might actually have it. She might actually have it. And this is huge. Yes, Orsted, after all this time, though it might not be perfect, Orsted spoke warmly.
Well done.
Orsted spoke for. How do you do Orsted's voice warmly? Orsted spoke warmly. They were just a couple of short words, but their brevity emphasized how they clearly came from his heart. Yeah. Yeah. Nanahoshi's voice wavered. Her voice screwed up to stop the tears that were on the verge of flowing. She looked up ever so slightly to hold them back. She almost had Rudius crying too. That's huge. That is absolutely huge. And it's so cool to see how much Orsted is kind of choked up by this too. Like, good job. You finally got it. Because I think he, obviously traveling around with her, obviously acknowledged how much she's been through, how much she's struggled, how much she's gone through. And so obviously he's excited for her as well. And probably seen firsthand several times as they journeyed around how much she felt lost, how much she looked like she was in pain, how much she didn't like this, how much she hated the world, how much she didn't want to be there. This is not something she wanted. Not something she wanted. And she wants to get out of there. The home teleportation circle, the thing that Nanahoshi had dreamed of all this time, returning home, was the one thing she strove for. She was immensely homesick. She'd gone from an idea to a theory to failure, and yet another idea. Once she finally had the theory nailed, she had to make the technology a reality, sharpening her engineering skills with experiment after experiment. It was nearly 5 years since she had become an apprentice to Pedagogus. Now she'd finally completed it. Rudius, I'm sorry to bug you since you got so much on your plate. Oh no, if anything, I should apologize for making you wait all this time. So Nanahoshi was the one who called Rudius here, and she waited this whole time without a single gripe, even though she finished her life's work. That is the funny thing, because this implies right here that, yes, he's always watching, and then Rudius has this child, and Pedagogus at that point, the moment the baby came out, he's like, yeah, that's not it. But it implies that at that time, he was sending Aramanfi down there to call him up there for Nanahoshi. It's like, really? Is it really that well timed? Come on. It seems a little cheesy. I'm sorry. Unless they already plan on contacting him and it just happened to fall in line. It's fine. Also, congrats on the baby. Thank you very much. I was kind of surprised, actually. Guess you had a lot of stuff to consider. Consider. Bruce wasn't sure he was the type to consider things. Not much ran through his head, qualified as thought. Okay. I'm gonna need a bunch of mana for the final experiment. I know you have plenty of stuff to do, but would you please lend a hand? Nanahoshi bowed to Rudius. There was a fire in her eyes. She knew that this was the last step, that within reach was the goal. Of course, this might take a month or two. Is that alright? It should be. Rudius had reasons to refuse, but not a right to. He wanted to ask if it can wait until after he defeated Geese, but he wasn't enough of a jerk to say it out loud. Nanahoshi had waited long enough. I like that. I mean, yes, to Rudius' credit here, him having to sidetrack on a regular basis to help her with the experiment and eventually kind of build up the mana for it. And yes, the moment where he has to send her, it's going to take a massive, massive amount of mana. He's going to have to feed so much in this thing. And that could have been why the other Nanahoshi failed, is that he wasn't available and thus she didn't have the mana to do it. That could have been the thing that prevented it. But I mean, she could have easily just gathered a whole crap ton of gems or something like that. Or maybe ask Orsted. Maybe Orsted could have helped her. I don't know if he would. But yeah, he's going to have to expend a lot of mana to fuel this thing. And that's going to put him in danger. That if somebody attacks when that comes, which, wow. Could that be the foretold time? Could that be the time that the man god wants to attack? He knows at some point Rudius is going to feel this summoning or this transportation, this teleportation back. Could the man god know this is coming and know that's the perfect time to attack? Because he won't even have the mana to fuel his magic armor. He is going to be exposed. Perfect time. Take him down. Curious. Hopefully this will be done on the floating fortress. Not if that's going to change anything. Just going to mean that Petagoos can at least assist with the familiars, which that would be really insanely cool. We're going to have, like, again, the North God and the Sword God, and they're going to go up there with geese, and they're just going to be running out there, and they have these familiars just kind of charging with their masks, and they'll probably get wiped out really quickly. I don't think the familiars have not been impressive so far. I mean, we only got one indication of their power, and that's them getting locked down by Rada, which she was a water god, very powerful, so. But yeah, I dig this. And the idea of, like, yeah, I'm technically really busy. I can't really expend my mana like that. I gotta work on geese. I gotta go to these locations. I don't really have time for this. But I don't want to be a jerk. This girl's been waiting. She's been waiting. She's been suffering. That's the key thing. She's been suffering for a long time here. Thank you so much. Nanahoshi bowed yet again. Just then, she happened to look Sylphie's way, the mother whose face was still clouded with unease. Nanahoshi hopped over to her and whispered something in her ear. A jolt ran through Sylphie's body, after which she turned to Nanahoshi with a stunned look on her face. Nanahoshi nodded, before Sylphie glanced at Rudius and nodded back. All right then, let's move to the teleportation circle. Rudius didn't know what they discussed, but Nanahoshi declared that they would move on. There's a side of me that, like, wish she went up there and whispered, like, girl, I'm not taking him. Is this a good sign? Is this a good enough sign for you? I'm not touching your boy. I'm leaving. Don't worry about me no more. It's so funny. Nanahoshi up there like, I could take him with me if I wanted. You're so afraid of me, girl. I'm leaving. It's always puzzled me how much Sylphie is so afraid of Nanahoshi. It's like Sylphia. It's like the lineup for Sylphiet. They have, like, yeah, Orsted the dragon god. Sylphie ain't afraid. You have, the water god Rada. Sylphie not afraid. Nanahoshi, Sylphie's terrified. Her mortal enemy. Nanahoshi. Sylphie at perspective. She thought that she got trapped in her own head. She worried all on her own, convinced herself that she had to solve everything on her own, and overwhelmed herself into a sort of paralysis. But had she thought about it, she would have realized that she wasn't alone anymore. She had family that she could rely on. Rudy might have been half joking at the time, but he did say something about looking out for each other like siblings. She never had siblings, but Sig did. Lucy was doing her best to be a reliable big sister. It was hard for Sylphie to say that she relied on Lucy. She was still just a child, but she had a feeling that Lucy had grown up into someone she could trust. Knowing Lucy had her blood made her doubt that a little, though. Ouch! Again, that whole thing of, like, guess her feeling that she's staining them, poisoning them with her blood. Eesh. Audis and Lada would grow up someday too. Sig wouldn't be alone. Sylvie had support outside her family. And see, this. God damn, that sucks. That sucks, dude. I'm not liking how this is laid out now that I'm reading this a second time. She had a feeling Lucy would grow up into someone that she could trust. Knowing Lucy had her blood made her doubt that a little. Audis and Lada would grow up someday too. Sig wouldn't be alone. Sylphie had support outside of her family. Anyways, that sounds bad. I'm sorry, that just sounds bad, but I don't want to read too much into that. Nanahoshi told her that if she had any worries, she could talk to her about them. That was something Sylphie hadn't expected from her, so it was surprise. Yeah, it's a weird distress for Nanahoshi. I love it. But I do like this idea, even though I'm joking about this whole idea with Nanahoshi. What this is doing right here, obviously, is that Nanahoshi, somebody that she didn't think she could ever talk to, this person that she does not trust, does not like the idea of her and Rudius being together, Probably the only one if Rudy asked her, hey, can I marry Nanahoshi too? She'd be like, nah. This person that she seems to have a massive distrust for comes up to her and says, if you have a problem, talk to me. You look like you're having a problem. You can talk to me. It kind of makes her go, that's right. This one person I have no trust for is open to help me out. And oh yeah, that's all these other people. It's one of those simple things where it's unintentional by Nanahoshi. I mean, I think Nanahoshi's intention is pure here. I think she's like, this girl looks like she's struggling. And obviously whatever they just did here didn't help. Let me tell the girl I can talk to her. Let me see if I can help her. This is somebody that Rudius, this guy that I really respect and care for, that has helped me through so much stuff and saved my life several times. His wife is not doing well, and whatever they've done right here has not fixed it. Let me just tell her I'll listen. Let me see if I can help out. But that's a trigger to Sylphie. Wake up. If this girl's wanting to help, yeah, that's right. All these other people want to help. Everybody wants to help me, but I just gotta talk to them. Sylphie knew that if she asked Queen Ariel, Luke, Zenoba, or Cliff, they would probably lend her an ear too. She always thought that the way that her hair color changed was a cowardly way out. Very interesting. And some part of her, that's why I thought about I said it in the chat last week with the premiere. It's like when she first looked out the side of that box when they were going up the pillar towards the divine continent, she's looking out the window. She's like, Rudius, if I chucked him out the window now, maybe his hair color will change. No, Sylphie, don't. Don't do it, Sylphie, no. And some part of her thought that people like Queen Ariel and Luke wouldn't have befriended her if her hair stayed green. I am kind of curious about that, because that was one thing that she was very afraid of letting them know. And it was part of the whole thing about, revealing it to Rudius at the academy, was that aspect. She was afraid of them knowing that she had green hair. But now she knew that none of that was true, that they surely would have befriended her all the same, just like Rudy did all those years ago. Yeah, everybody is not those bullies. Everybody is not those bullies. I mean, Zenith, Paul, Lilia, Roxy, these people had no problem. It was those bullies. Everybody is not those bullies. Sure, they might have been shaken up at first. Maybe they would have caused a fuss about the hair, about her demon heritage, about how she had to be a Superb. She felt that despite all that, they surely would have reached the same relationship they had now. Surely, Sieg could make those sorts of friends too. The way Sylphie made friends when Rudy taught her back in their childhood. That was why she stopped letting herself get bogged down by those worries. She'd teach Sieg those things herself. As she had that thought, she looked up to see Rudy's back as he hiked in front of her. For some reason, she decided to grab the hem of his sleeve. Rudy turned around. He had the same look as ever, gentle, yet a tiny bit apologetic and concerned. She figured she inspired that in him. It's all about this stupid name. I forgot. I'm sorry. Calling his name, he looked around and signaled to others to go on ahead. Everyone left, and once they were all alone, Rudy wrapped his arms around her shoulders, softly, gently, as to not crush Sieg. Rudy's body enveloped hers. His armor made him feel a bit stiff, but it comforted her. Rudy, I'm sorry. I think it looks like I made you worry. I saw his green hair, and I remembered it, my past. I thought about it, about where it all led. I thought that maybe this child wouldn't have a place in this world. It's not your fault. Everyone gets worried sometimes. And hey, it's on me for forgetting to think of a name. Yeah, but also, you've been traveling with just Roxy and Edis lately, right? I got the idea that I had to protect the children by myself. That's not true at all. The strength of his denial startled her a little bit, but she should have expected it. Rhea would say that, wouldn't he? Yeah, I know. I knew, but I forgot. Sorry. No, you don't have to apologize. I had a moment of weakness. Sylphie patted Sieg's head. He'd been asleep for a while now. This journey got her thinking. Sieg wasn't fragile as she thought. Not in terms of power or his health. More like his spirit was so strong. Cute little picture. Cute little picture. It's okay now. I think looking at you on this journey, it comforted me. It made me remember that you really would protect us. Rudy chuckled. His face looked doubtful, as though in disbelief that any aspect of him could be comforting. But Rudy took things as they came. When Sieg had green hair, he didn't lose his cool or anything. He even stared down Lord Pedigus with courage. Sylphie was sure that he had done the same if any other child faced that kind of danger. Well, Sylphiette, Rudy would sometimes call her by her full name. It was usually for two different reasons. Either he wanted to ask for something naughty, or he wanted to apologize. I don't think the first one's true. I have to go back. Go back to maybe volume 13? During the whole harem idea. I don't think that's true. I don't know. I'd have to look. I mean, I wouldn't doubt it because Refugin scares me sometimes. I was actually looking for clips for a new trailer, and I'm looking through a bunch of stuff, and I noticed way back when Nanahoshi summoned the watermelon. Back there, Roxy was talking to Zenoba and Cliff, and Ruth said it was something to do with their research. These guys never stopped working. I even said back then on the Mushoku Monday, man, yeah, it would be cool that she would join them on working on the automatons. She technically did. She technically did help him with that whole thing. Refugion's scary sometimes. Super scary sometimes. Now, granted, this is a light novel. I don't know if that was in the web novel. What is it, Rudius? And she's calling him Rudius. She's using the full name, too. You know, you can be mad at me for forgetting a baby's name, okay? Huh? But I wasn't really mad, though. If I had to say, I was more disappointed and unnerved. Sylphie started getting flustered as she responded. When she heard that he'd forgotten to think of a name, all she thought was that her child might not be loved by Rudy or anyone else in the world. When she explained that to him, he turned white as a sheet. It was a huge shock. But then it made sense to her. Being disappointed without being mad must have been harder on him. Yeah. For Rudius, yes. For Rudius, yes. 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 Because again, this is a trauma thing. Trauma from his previous life. His family, when he was a NEET, was disappointed in him. People weren't yelling at him, telling him, what the hell's wrong with you? Get your butt out there. No, they were disappointed in him. And he lived with that disappointment for so many years. He was locking himself up in that room. So that could be something that is much more painful for him to experience than anger and hatred, somebody being mad. Equally, that anger is going to ruin him, but this is something that personally for him affects him. And I think right here, he's really telling her, please be vocal with me. You can be mad at me. I screwed up. Tell me. Don't, again, be like Zenith. Please be like Zenith and yell at me and tell me you're mad. Please show me the signs. You're not showing me signs. You're keeping it bottled up. And she's like, no, I'm just disappointed. That's worse. That is technically makes sense because instead of her yelling at him and being vocal, it's more of a, oh, damn, it's disappointment. It's not lashing. It's just crap. It's failed. This has failed. Oh, I see. Got it. I'll be angry next time. Don't forget about me or the children ever again, Buster. Yes, ma'am. So darky. Oh, she's being cute. Sylphie's being cute. Rias nodded. He looked a little sheepish. Yeah, he's getting turned on by this. It's backfiring, Sylphie. It's backfiring. He's definitely not taking this to heart. He was so cute at times like this. He also got a little like this back when he took her clothes off, while still thinking that she was a boy. Remembering it made her feel embarrassed. They were just kids back then, and they'd seen each other naked many times since, but still. Let's get going. You've got to help Nanahoshi out, right? Yeah. By the way, what was it that she told you? It wasn't anything major, just that she would listen if she needed to talk. People say it to one another all the time. It's a secret. I haven't heard that line in forever. That's a callback. When was the last time we heard that? I want to say that she did it again in like after the whole secret was revealed. She did it again later on. I want to say it was like volume 13 or 14. But it's been a long time. We're going on 9 volumes since the last time she did the Teehee It's a Secret. The Teehee It's a Secret. The old Sylphie. We have a Fitz quote for the first time in a long time. It's a secret. I gotta bust out the old Fitz meme that I had on my screen all the time. Sylphie would keep it close to her heart. She felt happy that Nanahoshi chose her ear to whisper in, not Rudy's. Again, right there, she's still petty. Sylphie's still petty. She's still petty. My ears. I'm not gonna let that thieving Neko have Rudy's. She smiled, and when she did, Rudy smiled back. Hey, Rudy, I was kind of out of it for this trip, and I made everyone worry. When the kids are all grown up, and once everything's settled down for you, well, it's a pretty long time from now. But when that happens, let's go on another trip together. Yep. Yeah, Rudy gave a firm nod. They stayed together for a while, just gazing at each other's eyes. Sylphie closed hers on a whim, and he took the opportunity to give a gentle kiss. Opening them again, Sylphie felt a little embarrassed, yet so happy. Let's get going. Sure. Sylphie nodded and bounded along to catch up with the others, right beside Rudy. And that is chapter 4. What a cool set of chapters. What a cool set of chapters. I am loving this volume so far. Holy crap. This has been, oh my gosh. If this keeps this up, if this volume keeps being this good for however many more chapters we got, I don't know how many chapters are in this volume yet. We're only like 1/3 the way through. If it keeps up with this could be a S tier. We could finally have, for the first time in a long time, an S tier volume of Mushoku Tensei, which I'm all for. I'm all for it. Blow me away. Again, these first chapters have been so fantastic to show Sylphie what she's built, to make Sylphie realize the thing that she has built, to get back into her own traumas. But this whole stuff around Pedagoose was so cool in these chapters. These 2 chapters with Pedagoose was so freaking cool because, again, it is that idea of the unknown if he is a threat, the realization that he's not a threat. It's a little bit of a tee-hee. We all goofed up. We oopsies. But getting to the idea that he was trying to show Rudius a way of getting rid of the anxiety. Both Rudius and Sylphie had this massive anxiety, and he wanted to help them with getting rid of it. This place tells you it's not Laplace. Stop it. It's okay. I'm not a threat. Nobody's coming after your child. You don't have to worry about your child. Sylphie's already worried to hell about her child because she's afraid of this green hair, and she pretty much confirmed it earlier. She's not afraid of the idea of it being Laplace. Like, that's like the furthest thing from her mind. Like, even Roxy was asking her, are you less concerned about it being Laplace, but more worried about the green hair? Yes. She's just afraid of it being bullied and having no place, and nobody loved it. I had somebody that showed me the light. But what if Sieg doesn't? So this whole thing with Laplace would only be another thing to compound on top of that. But more so for Rudius himself because it's his future. Everything he has set up here to protect his family is about to get flipped on its head because the one thing that he's striving for is going to be right under his own roof. Go here. Let me clarify this for you. Don't worry about it. Your kid's okay. Like Orsted was saying, it's just your darling child. Like, it's these 2 people that are incredibly powerful that Rudius has created bonds with, one after the other one, saying, Rudius, it's just your darling, beautiful child. Orsted, it's just your darling child. Pedagoose, go here. Baptize it. Rudius, it's just your darling child. It's not Laplace. Calm down. 2 incredibly powerful people that have no semblance of family whatsoever. They're learning it through Rudius, having to tell Rudius, it's just your son. It's just your son. I fucking love this series. I love this series so much. I love this series so much. I'm not sure if this is hitting you guys as much as it hits me, but it hits me. It totally hits me. It's like these 2, like, grumpy old grandpas that have, like, they came back from the war years ago and slowly had to learn family again. And they're so stern. You think they have no love in their heart. And then something tragic comes up and they just step forward and they say, listen, grandson, let me tell you what's going on. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I love it. I love it. But yes, getting the whole Nanahoshi thing back in. I'm very curious how that's going to play out. Again, I'm almost going to just jump right into the next chapter. I don't even know what the chapter title is because I figured out a different way of doing this so I don't look at the titles. And I'm very curious if going into, they could, I mean, she said it's a month or something like that. So we're obviously probably not going to get into it immediately. He might end up going to the Sword Sanctum first, find out that he's not even there. I think that's going to be quick. They're going to go to the Sword Sanctum. They're not here. I think at that point, they're going to run into Nina Fallion, I think. And I think they're going to probably get a sense from her that, yeah, my dad said that he's going to hunt down Orsted, or he has a plan to. And they're going to possibly recruit Nina at that point, say, that's not good. He's working for the man god. That's really bad. And she's going to go, wait, what? And then she's going to join them in order to stop her father. I think that's what's going to happen there. I'm not sure what else they might have planned to go check out. I think he's pretty much sought out everybody that he had on his list so far. He might go check back in over on the Demon Continent to see if they find Kishirika, and then we'll end up running into Kishirika. That could be a thing. But then I think it's probably going to rope back to Nanahoshi. Going back to Nanahoshi and seeing what's going on there. And again, I'm very curious if she's just going to leave. And then at that point, we're just going to kind of go shrug, I guess, the future Nanahoshi kind of sucked. And all that stuff about being sent back from the future and all that kind of weird stuff with the displacement incident is just like shrug. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm not against that idea, but it does kind of make me wonder why there was so much emphasis given to the idea that she's like, I don't think I'm allowed to leave because something's not right here. Something's not right here. And we have to figure this out, Rudius. There's something happening here that's going to prevent me from leaving, and we have to figure it out. And she gave this massive theory out, and what is Rudius' response at that time? Okay, I don't care. I need to know about Orsted. I have to kill Orsted. That was all that he could think about at the time, because his family was in danger. He didn't care about this weird theory that she had. They had nothing to do with the current time. Okay, what? I don't care. Orsted. That's my threat right now. I don't know. We'll see. But anyways, that's it for this Mushoku Monday. Thank you guys so much for dropping by for the premiere. Hey, chat. Hope you guys enjoy this for this Mushoku Monday. I'm having way too much fun with these last few chapters. I'm hoping everybody else is enjoying as much as I am. Enjoying my cooking. Are y'all enjoying my cooking? This is one of those great things about not reading through it so fast. I know some people get upset about, like, oh my gosh, only 2 chapters. It's very few people, honestly. There's like most of the people are like, whatever, dude, take your time. And then every now and then there's like one person. There's that one guy that has to reply to every single posting of Mushoku Monday. Oh my gosh, only 2 chapters. This is exactly why I love that I cooked so much last Mushoku Monday, because I typically will read the next part just before Mushoku Monday comes out of the previous week. And so I get to laugh at myself most of the time for how badly I cooked. Like, that whole segment from the previous Mushoku Monday that I watched after reading this segment is just like, holy crap, Andrew is overcooking this part. Yeah, he's cooking like crazy on this part. He's like super wondering what the hell's going on with Petagoose. I mean, I was calling it the idea that I think that if Petagoose really did believe that it was a boss, he would have killed him on the spot. I just don't think he would. But it is cool kind of getting the sense of there of like, okay, why is Nanahoshi there? Oh, was Nanahoshi trying to stop him? No, right here we're finding out that no, Nanahoshi was just there to ask her about the teleportation back home and was going to announce that. Is that stuff that's really cool to kind of get a sense of like either how off I am or how I sometimes meet that point. And I think that's a lot of what everybody else picks up on. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if I read all 4 of these chapters. I wouldn't be able to cook that much and have fun really theorizing what's going on there because it gets answered the next chapters. And that could be frustrating for some people, but I love it. And there's a lot of other people that have expressed they like it too. That's, again, what I've mentioned before, this is the web novel experience, I think. What I'm doing is kind of like the web novel experience. Back when Refugien was releasing a chapter, and that's what people got until he wrote the next part, and they got the next chapter. I'm sort of getting that experience with a light novel because I'm reading it by these chapters and really kind of digging into it and kind of finalizing my thoughts at the time. I'm watching an episode of the show and giving my impressions on it, reaction to it. Anyways, it's all for me to say. Hope you guys enjoy this layout and enjoy my cooking. But I really appreciate you guys' support. Thank you so much for dropping by for the premiere. Hey, chat. Hope you guys are doing well. Hopefully you guys kept nice. No bad chatters in the chat. As per usual, greatly appreciate your guys' kind words. Everybody that supports channel monetarily through Patrons, tips, links, super thanks, membership, all that good stuff. I greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. It's because of your guys' support. This is a thing, and I greatly appreciate it. But until next time, until the next Mushoku Monday where Andrew's going to cook up a new dish, I'll take care. That's all he could think about at the time because Man God told him, I'm going to tell you, because that's all he could really think about at the time because all he could think about at the time, and that about as not bad as not bad got, as about as not bad as about as not bad as about as not bad as not bad got. A giant bipedal birds of prey known as Nidhogg ostriches. I want to say ostriches. I don't know why do I want to say ostriches?